Nobody in that penthouse boardroom understood they were facing the most dangerous intelligence operative in CIA history. An elderly custodian pushed a mop bucket through pools of expensive cologne and cigarette smoke, absorbing insults like water on tile. Silence was his weapon, invisible, patient, and absolutely lethal. Around him, laughter echoed off marble walls until his stillness became louder than their voices. And that quiet turned into a countdown to destruction. The Obsidian Tower stood 60 stories above Manhattan, owned entirely by one man, Dominic Russo, the invisible king of the East Coast underground. It was 2018, and every politician, every union boss, every dirty cop answered to him. His organization, the Crimson Collective, moved billions through legitimate businesses while bodies disappeared into the Hudson River. Where Russo walked, power followed like a shadow at noon. But tonight, something disrupted the pattern. In the corner of the executive conference room stood a man who should not have been there. Thomas Mercer, 72 years old, silver hair cropped military short, skin pale from decades spent in windowless rooms. His hands remained perfectly steady despite arthritis that should have crippled them. Nobody questioned why a janitor was cleaning during a closed-door meeting. Russo glanced at him with casual contempt. Just another invisible servant, he assumed. Russo kicked over the mop bucket, dirty water spreading across imported Italian marble. "You deaf old man," he sneered. "Private meeting, get out!" Thomas did not respond, just stared at the spreading water, calm as if the humiliation had never occurred. The silence stretched for heartbeats, and then something shifted in the atmosphere. There was something contained about this man, like pressurized steam behind a failing valve. One of the lieutenants, a man called Viper, whispered nervously, "Boss, that janitor's got military posture. Look at his stance." Russo shoved the mop bucket harder. It crashed into the wall. Still, the old man did not flinch, only raised his eyes for a fraction of a second. A calm stare, analytical and empty. A stare that did not belong to any ordinary custodian. Before you discover how a 72-year-old janitor became the nightmare of 12 mobsters, take a moment to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and drop a comment telling me which country you are watching from. United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia. I would love to know where my audience is tuning in from right now. Buckle up, because what Thomas Mercer is about to unleash in this boardroom is not just confrontation. It is a reckoning written in classified files and buried secrets. Stay close, because the truth about room 407 is about to surface, and the legend of the Ghost Protocol will come alive before your eyes. Manhattan's financial district was a cathedral of glass and steel where gods wore suits and demons carried briefcases. Law existed as window dressing, enforced selectively, bent casually. Dominic Russo controlled 17 legitimate corporations and twice that many shell companies. 2 decades earlier, Russo had eliminated a federal prosecutor investigating his operations. The prosecutor's car exploded in his driveway. Since then, nobody challenged the Crimson Collective directly. They laundered money, trafficked weapons, controlled judges. The city breathed corruption. Thomas Mercer arrived on Monday morning. Custodial uniform, background check forged perfectly, references that checked out because they were planted in real databases. He carried no weapons, no electronics, just cleaning supplies and a thermos of black coffee. He spoke to no one, asked nothing, simply observed. The head of building security barely glanced at his ID badge. Thomas answered in a voice roughened by decades of cigarettes he had never smoked. "From a company that no longer exists." "Oh!" That first week, Thomas cleaned offices after midnight, emptying trash cans and wiping down desks. The executives joked, planned deals, discussed shipments. One enforcer, a brutal man called Sledge, noticed the old janitor. "Look here, boys, fresh blood." He walked over, snatched Thomas's cleaning cart, dumped its contents on the floor. "Old-timers don't last long in this building. You came to retire early." Thomas knelt slowly, picking up supplies, his voice flat. "I came to collect something." Sledge laughed. "Collect what? Your pension?" Silence fell across the hallway. Sledge frowned, confused, then poured his coffee on Thomas's head and returned to his colleagues amid laughter. The old man wiped the liquid from his face with a cleaning rag, finished gathering his supplies, and pushed his cart toward the elevator. Before the doors closed, he looked back at the group of men. His gaze lingered on each face, cataloging them with photographic precision. Outside, 60 stories below, city lights glittered like broken promises. Traffic hummed, sirens wailed in the distance. Somewhere in classified archives, the name Thomas Mercer appeared in redacted documents. Ghost protocol, something everyone had forgotten. What deadly history did this old man carry? Keep watching. Thomas rented a studio apartment in Brooklyn, paid cash, used a fake name that would not survive serious investigation but did not need to. His room contained a bed, a folding chair, and a window overlooking the bridge. He sat on the bed and removed from his jacket pocket the only personal item he owned, a photograph, edges worn smooth from decades of handling. In it, a young intelligence officer in dress uniform stood beside a woman holding an infant. Thomas traced the woman's face with his fingertip. His expression did not change, but his breathing slowed. He had not allowed himself to feel in decades. The last time was 1989 when he returned from an operation in Berlin to find his apartment empty. His wife and daughter had been taken. No ransom demand, no explanation, just gone. Thomas activated every resource the agency possessed, called in favors from operatives across 3 continents, hunted leads through 12 countries. He found them 6 months later in a warehouse in Prague. Too late. The men responsible were contractors for a private military company called Blackstone Solutions, hired by a corporate client to send a message to the CIA. Stop investigating their operations or more families would disappear. Thomas tracked them for 2 years, eliminating them with methodical precision. 17 men died in accidents, suicides, and disappearances that closed without investigation. When the last contractor stopped breathing, Thomas vanished from official records. He became a legend, the ghost, the operative who never missed, who completed impossible extractions, who left no witnesses and no evidence. For 3 decades he worked black operations, living as a non-person, trying to forget the taste of loss. Until 6 weeks ago, a dying intelligence analyst stumbled into a safe house in Vienna, requesting emergency extraction. Before he died, he spoke of Manhattan, of Russo and his organization, and mentioned a name that stopped Thomas's heart. Viktor Sokolov, the Russian handler who had ordered his family's abduction as leverage against CIA operations. The only man who had escaped his vengeance 29 years ago. And now Viktor Sokolov was Dominic Russo's silent partner, laundering Russian oligarch money through American real estate. Thomas removed his shoes and lay down fully clothed, staring at the photograph. His hands trembled not from fear but from muscle memory. His fingers remembered the weight of classified files, the exact pressure to break a man's windpipe, the smell of cordite. Outside, the city continued its restless dance, unaware that the ghost had awakened. The Obsidian Tower had just become a tomb. The countdown had started. Do not look away. Tuesday morning arrived with gray skies and the promise of rain. Thomas woke at 4:30 as always, performing precise stretches that kept a 72-year-old body functioning like a weapon. Every joint protested but obeyed. He took the subway to Midtown, arriving at the Obsidian Tower before dawn. The lobby guard waved him through without inspection. As he cleaned, Thomas watched the building wake up. Russo's men arrived early, collecting protection payments from businesses. One lieutenant, a cruel man called Reaper, slapped a restaurant owner who short-paid. The man fell. Nobody intervened. Thomas gripped his mop handle tightly. The security guard noticed the change in his posture. "Do not get involved, old man. Those guys kill for fun," Thomas said without looking away. "I know, I used to train them." The guard paled and said nothing more. Thomas stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the 60th floor, the executive level, where Russo held court. The penthouse was empty except for Sledge, who was counting cash at a conference table. He looked up as Thomas entered with his cleaning cart. "Hey, janitor, this floor's off limits today. Get lost." Thomas moved slowly, methodically emptying trash cans. "This floor gets cleaned every Tuesday." Sledge stood, towering over the old man. "You deaf! I said get lost before I throw you off the balcony." Thomas straightened slowly, vertebrae cracking audibly. "This building has 47 security cameras, 12 armed guards, and biometric locks on every sensitive door. You could not throw me off this floor if you tried." Sledge blinked, confused by the specificity. "You threatening me?" Thomas said calmly. "Just stating facts. Facts are not threats. They are inevitabilities." Sledge reached for the pistol in his waistband. Thomas moved. One moment the old man stood 3 feet away, the next his hand locked around Sledge's wrist with impossible strength. The pistol clattered to the floor. Sledge tried to pull free, couldn't. Thomas applied precise pressure to a nerve cluster. Sledge's knees buckled. "You have 2 choices," Thomas whispered. "Walk away and tell Russo I am here, or I break your arm in 3 places and you crawl away. Choose quickly." Sledge gasped. "Who are you?" Thomas released him. "Tell Russo the ghost wants to talk about room 407. Sledge scrambled backward, grabbed his gun, and ran to the elevator. Thomas returned to his cleaning as if nothing had happened. Within 20 minutes, the penthouse flooded with armed men. Russo emerged from his private office, flanked by 12 lieutenants, all carrying weapons. He stared at the old janitor, who calmly pushed a vacuum cleaner across the carpet. "You got some balls, old man," Russo said coldly. "Sledge says you assaulted him, says you mentioned room 407. Thomas switched off the vacuum, turned slowly, looked directly at Russo for the first time. Room 407 was a CIA black site in Prague, 1989. Your partner Viktor Sokolov used it to torture intelligence assets. My wife and daughter died there. You laundered the money that funded the operation." The color drained from Russo's face. Behind him, a gray-haired man in an expensive suit stepped forward, speaking with a thick Russian accent. "Thomas Mercer, they said you were dead." Thomas smiled without warmth. "I was for 29 years, but ghosts do not stay buried when you disturb their graves." In that instant, the entire building understood who Thomas Mercer truly was. The operative who had eliminated 47 targets without a single failed operation. The deadliest confrontation in intelligence history was about to begin. Russo let out a harsh laugh, breaking the tension. "The ghost, that is a bedtime story we told recruits, a myth." He turned to Thomas with contempt. "Look, old man, I do not know what delusion you are operating under, but I run this building, and if you want Victor, you will have to go through me and my 12 men. Thomas did not look away from Victor as if Russ did not exist. 12 men worry me as much as 12 children. I have killed more for less." Russo stopped laughing. There was something in the old man's voice, a cold certainty, a calm only men who have stared into the abyss and made it blink possess. Victor stepped backward. "Dominic, listen to me. This man is real. I saw him dismantle an entire security team in 4 minutes. He does not fight, he eliminates." Russo spat. "You are paranoid." Victor shook his head frantically. "No, we need to evacuate, now." Russo instinctively reached for the pistol in his shoulder holster. Thomas spoke quietly, but everyone heard. "I will give you one option, Russo. Hand over Victor. Let me finish what I started 29 years ago and I leave. You and your men stay alive. You keep your empire. Nobody has to die today." Russo asked, "And if I refuse?" Thomas said. "Then I upload 47 gigabytes of evidence to the FBI, NSA, and Interpol simultaneously. Bank records, wire transfers, surveillance footage, communications, everything. Your organization collapses by noon. Then I kill everyone in this room. Victor dies last, so he watches his protection fail." Russo spat on the marble floor. "This old man is insane." One lieutenant raised his weapon. "Boss, let me end this." Russo raised his hand, stopping the man. He studied Thomas, searching for fear, doubt, hesitation, found nothing. Just an empty void in those gray eyes that had seen too much death to fear it any more. "You have until 5 o'clock today to evacuate this building and leave Victor behind. If you are still here, the files upload automatically, and I come for each of you." Thomas turned and pushed his cleaning cart toward the elevator, leaving 12 armed men watching him go. Victor slumped against the wall, sweat pouring down his face. Deep in his gut, Russo began to fear Victor might be right. 5 o'clock came with rain hammering against floor-to-ceiling windows. Thomas ascended in the elevator, cleaning uniform replaced with a simple black suit. No weapons visible, no equipment, just an old man riding to the top floor. The lobby had been evacuated. Building security had fled. The entire tower stood empty except for the 60th floor. Russo waited in the penthouse boardroom with Victor and 10 men, all armed with automatic weapons. They had not evacuated. They had prepared an ambush. "Last chance, Mercer," Russo called out as Thomas stepped off the elevator. "Walk away. You do not have to die today." Thomas stepped into the boardroom. "I have been dead 29 years. Today I just closed the file." Russo gave a signal. His men raised their weapons. This was an execution. "Any last words?" Thomas looked directly at Victor. "You ordered my family taken to send a message. They begged for mercy. You gave them room 407. Victor closed his eyes, tears streaming down his weathered face. I was following orders." "And now I am following mine," Thomas replied. Absolute silence. Russo raised his hand. "Fire!" 10 weapons lifted. Thomas did not move. His hand reached slowly into his jacket pocket. The lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing the room in red. The men fired blindly, muzzle flashes illuminating chaos. When the lights returned 3 seconds later, Thomas stood in a different position. 5 men lay unconscious on the floor, pressure points struck with surgical precision. The others spun wildly, trying to track him. Thomas moved through them like smoke, striking nerve clusters, disarming with minimal motion, decades of training compressed into pure efficiency. No wasted movement, no hesitation. 12 seconds later, 10 men lay groaning on the marble floor, alive but incapacitated. Russo backed toward his private office, fumbling to reload. He is not human, he is a machine. Victor stood frozen, unable to run, unable to hide, just watched as Thomas walked toward him slowly. Inevitable, relentless. Thomas stopped 5 feet from Victor. 10 men disabled, 1 left. You! Victor fell to his knees. End it, Thomas, I deserve nothing else. But Russo raised his pistol, not at Thomas, but at Victor. If I am going down, this traitor comes with me. Thomas moved. The sound of the gunshot echoed. Victor remained untouched. Russo collapsed backward, his pistol clattering across the floor, his wrist shattered from a precise strike he never saw coming. Thomas stood over him, expression unchanged. You do not get to choose who dies. That privilege belongs to ghosts. He looked down at Victor. You get to live, spending every remaining day knowing you survived only because I allowed it. The files upload in 3 minutes. Every agency in the world will be hunting you. Run far, run fast, and pray we never meet again. Without another word, Thomas walked to the elevator. As the doors closed, he pressed a button on a small device in his pocket. Somewhere in the cloud, encrypted files began transmitting to law enforcement agencies across 4 continents. Thomas exited the building as sirens approached from every direction. He walked calmly into the rain, disappearing into the crowded streets of Manhattan. The ghost had returned one final time, delivered his justice, and vanished back into legend. The Crimson Collective collapsed within 72 hours. Victor Sokolov was arrested at JFK Airport. Dominic Russo spent the rest of his life in federal prison. And somewhere in Brooklyn, an old man sat in a studio apartment, staring at a photograph, finally able to close his eyes and rest. Stories of Thomas Mercer would circulate through intelligence agencies for decades. A man who could dismantle an organization with a flash drive, whose patience was absolute, whose mercy arrived only after justice had been served. The city could breathe easier knowing one ghost had finally found peace. The rain washed the streets clean. Neon lights reflected off wet pavement, and somewhere in the shadows, a legend walked away from his final operation, leaving only silence and scattered evidence behind. Thomas Mercer, the ghost, had finished what he started 29 years ago, and in doing so, he became more than a man. He became a warning, a story, a reminder that some debts never expire. And that is how it ended, folks. A tower once filled with corruption now stands empty, awaiting new owners under new laws. Thomas Mercer did not just take revenge. He reminded Manhattan that evil cannot hide forever. Even the darkest secrets must face the light. Some say he retired to a cabin in Montana. Others swear they saw him boarding a flight to Prague, returning to where it all began. Maybe he still walks among us, carrying the weight of his past, waiting for the next wrong that needs righting. But one thing is certain. Where justice falters, legends never quit. And maybe, just maybe, when you see an elderly janitor cleaning an office late at night, remember, not everyone is what they seem. Not every old man is harmless. And sometimes the most dangerous weapon in the room is the one nobody notices. Now tell me, partner, if you were in Thomas's position, would you have let Victor live or finished it? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know what you would have done. And if you have made it this far, riding with me through every twist, every shadow, and every revelation of this story, thank you. Your support keeps these stories alive. Before you go, do not forget to hit that like button if this tale made your heart race. Subscribe so you do not miss the next journey into the world of shadows and secrets. And tell me from where in the world you are watching. It is amazing to see how far these stories travel. Until our next story, partner, keep your instincts sharp, your secrets close, and your honor intact. Because in this world, sometimes justice wears no badge. Stay vigilant, and may the legend of the ghost live forever in your memory.